Imagine you walk right into your local bank. You're looking to get a loan to start a new business, or maybe you want to buy a house.
Right.
You sit across the desk from a loan officer. You make eye contact, you plead your case, you explain your grand vision, and eventually they look over your file, they give this like thoughtful nod, and they stamp approved.
Yeah, the classic scenario.
Exactly. And you walk out feeling like you just convinced another human being to believe in you. But what if the human didn't actually make that decision at all?
Wow, yeah.
Like, what if that loan officer was simply delivering a script, you know? Just executing a judgment that was finalized by an algorithm before you even walked through those glass doors.
And that invisible shift in power is exactly what we're dissecting today. We're looking at this really fundamental reordering of how decisions are made in our society.
Right.
And it's all hiding behind the exact same interface we've used for decades.
It is. And that brings us to our mission for this deep dive. Today, we are exploring an observation record from Tommy Yoshida, or in Japanese, Tommy Yoshida.
Yes, a really fascinating source.
It really is. Now, before we get into the weeds, I have to lay out some very specific ground rules for this exploration, because Yoshida actually has a fixed opening for his work.
Right, and we are honoring those strict parameters today. The parameters are vital, honestly, because they set the entire tone for the observation. If we ignore them, we just miss the point of his work entirely.
So to you listening, here is the premise. We are not here to evaluate the morality of AI. We are not doing a tutorial on how to use AI tools. And perhaps most importantly, we are actively refusing to reach any neat, tidy conclusions today.
Right, we are embracing the unfinished. I mean, in Yoshida's framework, incomplete thoughts, pending questions, and open-ended observations, they're just left exactly as they are.
Yeah, because we're in it, right?
Exactly. We are in the messy middle of a massive paradigm shift. If we try to tie a neat bow on it, we're basically creating a fiction.
I also want to prepare you for a specific feeling today. As we talk through these ideas, both the underlying concepts and the way the language translates from the original Japanese, you might sense a bit of friction.
Oh, absolutely.
It might feel a little unnatural, or you might even experience a sense of, discomfort.
And that slight awkwardness is entirely intentional. You know, Yoshida's notes contain this real tension between human language and technological systems.
Right.
So we're leaving those rough edges uncorrected so you can actually observe how language, technology, and, well, human judgment interact during a transition period.
Right. The friction isn't an error. The friction is the subject matter.
Perfectly said.
So let's just dive right into the concrete reality of Yoshida's text. Because he isn't focusing on the flashy stuff, right? We aren't talking about Wall Street high-frequency trading algorithms or autonomous military drones.
No, not at all.
He is looking at the quietest, most mundane integration of AI into finance imaginable, which is everyday bank loan assessments.
Which is brilliant, honestly, because the most profound societal shifts rarely announce themselves with a megaphone.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yoshida points out that AI is not arriving as some sudden, loud disruption in your daily financial life. It is quietly settling into processes that already exist.
Wait, okay, quietly settling in. I have to challenge that phrasing a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
Because if this technology is literally flipping the sequence of who holds the power to prove a mortgage or a small business loan, how is that quiet?
I see what you mean.
That sounds like a massive structural upheaval masquerading as business as usual.
Well, it is a massive upheaval, but it's silent from the user's perspective. Think about the physical form of the transaction.
Okay.
You still go to the bank. You still fill out an application. Formally, that loan decision is presented to the public as a quote-unquote human decision.
Right. There's a person sitting right there.
Exactly. The paperwork literally has a human signature on it. But Yoshida urges us to look at the structural change hidden beneath the floorboards. The entire sequence of judgment has flipped.
Okay, let's unpack the mechanics of that for a second. What does the flip sequence actually look like in practice?
So, historically, a human looked at your data, weighed the factors, and maybe used a calculator or some basic software as a tool to help them decide.
Right. The human is in the driver's seat.
Exactly. Now, the AI calculates the scores, runs the risk matrices, and generates a full evaluation before the human review even begins.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And instead of just looking at your income and debt, The AI is instantly scraping thousands of data points.
Like what?
Well, perhaps your micro-spending habits, the geographic stability of your neighborhood, predictive models of your industry's future, and it synthesizes all of that into a baseline score.
Jeez.
The machine goes first.
So the human is stepping up to the plate, but the machine has already decided if it's going to be a strike or a home run.
That's a good way to put it.
Let me try another analogy. It's like using a GPS to drive somewhere. You're sitting in the driver's seat. Your hands are on the wheel. Your foot is on the gas.
Right.
You feel like you are driving the car and making the decisions. You choose to turn left or right.
But the route was already predetermined by a system calculating traffic patterns that you can't even see?
Yes. And I'll take it a step further. It's not just that the GPS hands you a route. It's like the GPS refuses to even show you certain roads on the screen because it predetermined they were, I don't know, too complex for your vehicle.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. The map itself is censored before you even look at it.
Yeah.
You are just executing a plan within a reality that was actively fenced in for you.
Fenced in. That is the critical concept here. You feel like the agent of action, but the parameters of your reality were completely defined before you even turned the key in the ignition.
So if that's the case, let's look at the logical extreme of this setup. If the AI sets the premise, if it scrapes the data, builds the risk matrix, and basically hands a pre-filtered map to the loan officer who is actually taking responsibility for the final call.
Yeah, that's the big question.
I mean, the human's name is on the paperwork, the human looks you in the eye and says denied, but did they really make a decision?
You've hit on the exact discomfort Yoshida is documenting here. There is a huge psychological weight to this shift.
I can imagine.
Originally, AI was introduced into these environments as an assistant.
Right.
A tool to just speed up paperwork.
Yeah, to make things more efficient.
Exactly. But its initial filtering process has quietly mutated. It is no longer mere assistance. It has become the unbreakable premise upon which humans base their judgment.
Assistance turning into premise. Wow. That entirely changes the job description of the human.
It really does. Put yourself in the shoes of that loan officer for a second.
Okay.
A highly sophisticated data-driven system, one that processes variables you couldn't possibly calculate in a lifetime, hands you a file.
Right.
And it says, this applicant is a high risk. Their predictive score is in the bottom percentile.
Yeah.
How much sheer contrary evidence would you need to gather to override that? How much personal professional risk are you willing to take to look at the machine and say, actually, you're wrong?
Honestly, almost none. Because if you override the machine and the borrower defaults, it's entirely your fault.
Exactly.
But if you blindly agree with the machine and the borrower defaults, you can just say, well, the system said it was okay. You can blame the system.
Right. The safest bet for the human is to just become a rubber stamp for the premise established by the machine.
Which means the baseline reality has been established completely by the AI.
Yeah. The human is now just reacting to the machine's reality, which actually leads into one of the most profound sections of Yoshida's notes.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
He brings in the context of traditional Japanese lending practices.
Yes. This part of the text really struck me. It's beautiful, but also incredibly melancholic in a way.
It really is.
He points out that traditional lending was highly structured. I mean, it certainly wasn't a free-for-all, but it was rarely entirely rigid. There was always a numerical criteria, but there was also, like, something else.
Right. He talks about the existence of a margin. In Japanese, the concept is referred to as yohaku, which roughly translates to blank space.
Yohaku, blank space.
Yeah.
I love that. How does that actually function in a financial transaction, though?
So it functioned as room for interpretation based on context. It wasn't just about the rigid numbers on the page. It was based on conversation. It was based on accumulated trust over years of doing business together in a specific community. The blank space was essentially where the human element lived.
That makes so much sense.
It was an acknowledgement that not every single aspect of a human life or a business can be perfectly reduced to a quantifiable metric.
Let's ground this in a real scenario, because I really want to make sure the mechanics of this loss are clear.
Okay, let's do it.
Think of a local bakery that has been in a neighborhood for, I don't know, a decade. Last year, they had a terrible financial year because a water main burst and ruined all their expensive ovens. On paper, their revenue dropped by 40%.
Ouch. Yeah.
The AI scrapes that data, sees a massive drop in revenue, flags it as a high-risk failure, and just filters them out immediately.
Right, because the system operates strictly on its programmed criteria. A 40% drop in revenue just equals high default risk. End of story.
But the human loan officer, who has lived in that neighborhood for 10 years, who buys bread from that bakery every Sunday, knows it was a freak accident.
Exactly.
They know the baker is resilient and the customer base is intensely loyal. That contextual grace, that allowance for human messiness and bad luck is the yohaku. It's the blank space.
It is.
So if the AI standardizes the initial filter, what happens to those edge cases?
They vanish.
Just gone.
Just gone. And that is the exact tension Yoshida is highlighting. If the AI does the initial sort, the files that require that blank space to be understood are simply discarded in the first round. The human never even gets the chance to apply context or trust because the system has already organized the possibilities and removed the anomalies before the file ever reaches a human desk.
The human only gets to judge the reality the AI allows them to see.
Yes.
And the reality the AI creates has no blank space. It's perfectly filled in.
Which brings us to another fascinating Japanese concept Yoshida introduces. He observes that this loss of blank space changes the texture of judgment.
The texture.
Yeah. The word he uses is tezawari. It translates to the tactile feel, the physical texture of the act of deciding.
The texture of judgment. That phrase it forces you to stop and rethink what a decision actually is. Like, what does a decision feel like?
Well, think about the cognitive load of making a truly difficult choice. There is friction. You weigh competing factors, you struggle with the gray areas, you might even lose sleep over it.
Yeah, we've all been there.
You feel the heavy physical weight of the consequences on your shoulders. That friction is the texture of human judgment.
It's the hesitation before you drop the stamp on the paper.
Yes. And Yoshida is saying that this texture is fundamentally changing. It's not simply a matter of loans becoming strictly harder to get or easier to get. It's not a volume dial turning up or down.
It's the sensation of the dial itself changing.
Exactly. The actual range of possible decisions is being narrowed, and the friction is being smoothed out by the algorithm beforehand.
Right.
The judgment feels completely different to the human executing it because the heavy, textured lifting of categorizing reality has already been outsourced to a machine.
So you're not actually doing the hard part anymore.
No, you are no longer grappling with uncertainty. You are just confirming a mathematical probability.
And if we flip the perspective to the borrower's side, this invisible smoothing of friction creates an incredibly frustrating disconnect.
Oh, massively.
If you are that bakery owner and you get rejected, you naturally want to know why. You want to trace the logic so you can fix it. But Yoshida points out that when you ask why, the logic chain breaks down.
It becomes a black box. The result is presented to you with absolute clarity, denied. But the intermediate steps that led to that denial are completely opaque.
And the craziest part is, the loan officer sitting across from you, you probably can't explain it either.
No, they can't.
They don't know the exact mathematical weighting of the thousands of data points that led the AI to spit out a low score. They just see the red flag on their dashboard.
They are delivering a verdict generated by a logic flow that is invisible to them. The flow is obscured, but the final judgment is treated as human.
Right.
The human is taking responsibility for a mechanism they do not understand and cannot explain.
This creates a bizarre, almost surreal facade of normalcy. I mean, from the outside looking in, nothing seems to have changed for you as a borrower.
Nothing at all.
The bank looks the same, the app on your phone looks the same, you submit your financial history, you wait a few days, and you get a result. Can I borrow the money? Yes or no? How much? It mimics the exact ritual we performed 20 years ago.
The interface is a perfect replica of the past. But internally, the boundary between human and machine is no longer a clear delineating line. The two are overlapping, just bleeding into one another.
So where exactly does the machine stop and the human begin?
That is the unanswerable question. The exact point of handover is constantly moving. Is the decision 80% AI and 20% human?
Who knows?
Is the human purely a rubber stamp? Or does the human still hold 100% of the veto power in theory, even if they are psychologically conditioned to never, ever use it?
Yeah.
The boundaries are blurring to a degree that trying to cleanly separate them is becoming impossible.
You know, I keep trying to find a villain in this text.
I think we all do.
As we talk, I have this overwhelming urge to say, this is wrong, we need regulations to force banks to reveal the algorithms, or, we must mandate that humans manually review every single denial to protect the blank space.
Yeah.
I just want to solve the discomfort.
But Yoshida doesn't give us that out, does he?
No, he doesn't. And if I force a solution, I'm basically violating the mission of this deep dive. Yoshida specifically notes that we cannot clearly declare whether this shift improves or limits the lending process.
It really forces us to sit in a very uncomfortable space. We are wired to categorize technological shifts as purely good or purely bad.
Right, black or white.
You could easily argue that AI makes lending faster, removes human bias, and is far more objective. Or you could argue that AI strips away human empathy, context, and destroys the yohaku. But Yoshida is asking us to suspend that moral judgment entirely. He just wants us to observe the mechanical shift itself.
We have to value the incomplete thought.
The value of his observation doesn't lie in prescribing a quick fix. The value lies in simply recognizing that the fundamental sequence of reality has shifted.
Yeah.
Human discretion is now positioned after a system has already organized the world. And
What?
once you truly understand that mechanism, you start seeing it everywhere. It's not just banking.
That is the most unsettling part of this entire exploration. The AI sets the table, it chooses the menu, it cooks the meal, and the human just chooses which fork to use.
That's a great analogy.
But the human still walks away believing they prepared the feast.
That's the illusion of agency. The blank space is being filled in by predictive models before we even arrive at the desk. And what's lost isn't just the edge cases, the bakeries with the burst pipes.
Right.
What's lost is the uniquely human act of grappling with uncertainty.
The tezawari.
The texture. Exactly. When a machine processes the profound complexity of a human life into a standardized, frictionless score, it flattens the texture of existence. Friction sounds inefficient, but friction is where humanity lives.
We are messy.
We are. We have burst pipes. We don't perfectly fit predictive models.
But if the predictive model becomes the unbreakable premise of reality, then those messy, frictional human parts aren't seen as context anymore. They're just seen as mathematical errors to be aggressively filtered out before the human ever sees them.
And yet, amidst all this automation and invisible filtering, the human loan officer still has to look the borrower in the eye.
Yeah.
They still have to send the email from their personal account. They still have to own the decision. The heavy burden of the final say remains entirely on human shoulders, even as the actual power of sight and sorting has been surrendered to the machine.
So let's look at where we stand. We started with the strict rules of Tommy Yoshida's observation, really committing to the discomfort of unfinished thoughts. We examined how AI isn't kicking the door down, but quietly settling into the mundane infrastructure of our finances.
We unpacked the illusion of the human's final say, detailing how a machine's data scraping fundamentally flips the sequence of judgment.
Right.
We saw how a helpful tool transforms into an inescapable premise, placing an immense psychological weight on the human who has to interact with it.
We explored the loss of yohaku, the blank space that allows for human context and grace, and how the very texture of judgment, the tezawari, is being stripped of its friction.
Yeah.
We looked at the black box, where the result is brutally clear, but the underlying logic is a mystery, even to the people enforcing it.
And through it all, we have honored the mandate to avoid a tidy conclusion. We are sitting with the unresolved reality of a system where the boundary between human responsibility and algorithmic sorting has basically dissolved.
Which leaves us with Yoshida's ultimate lingering question. It's the core tension we've been orbiting this entire time. When a massive, invisible system presents a final decision to the world as human, where exactly does the human element actually begin?
It's a structural mystery disguised as everyday routine.
It is. And I want to leave you, listening to this, with a final thought to mull over in your own life. Because what Yoshida is observing isn't confined to a bank in Japan. It is the blueprint for how we navigate the modern world.
Absolutely.
Think about the last major decision you made that relied heavily on a search engine, an algorithm, or a digital assistant. Maybe it was choosing the quickest route on a map to get to a crucial meeting.
Or picking a neighborhood to rent an apartment in.
Right. Or even deciding which news articles to read to form your political opinion. You read the screen. You clicked the button. You pulled the trigger, so you took the responsibility for the outcome.
Yeah.
But if an invisible system, pre-selected, the only options you are allowed to choose from, if it scraped the data, filtered out the blank space, smoothed away the friction, and handed you a neatly organized, fenced-in reality, how much of that choice was actually yours?